First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Recha Kodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Psalms, the 105th chapter. Oh, give thanks unto the Lord Yahweh, call upon his name, make known his deeds among the people. Sing unto him, sing psalms unto him, talk ye of all his wondrous works. Glory ye in his holy name, let the heart of them rejoice that seek the Lord. And who seek the Lord? His elect, right? They're the ones who seek the Lord. As the scriptures say, they follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. Seek the Lord Yahweh and his strength, seek his face evermore. And Solomon said that, right? What is the conclusion of the whole matter? After he searched under the sun for wisdom, fear the Lord and keep his commandments. In order to do that, you have to seek the Lord. Remember his marvelous works that he hath done, his wonders and the judgments of his mouth. O ye seed of Abraham, his servant, yet ye children of Jacob, his chosen. Which shows you, right? The chosen is Jacob, not Ishmael, not Edom, not any of Abraham's other sons, because Abraham didn't have Jacob. Jacob wasn't Abraham's son; he was his grandson, right? Through Isaac. So if Jacob is chosen, then that means that Isaac is chosen, because it's through Isaac, as the scriptures say, in Isaac shall thy seed be called. He is the Lord Yahweh, our God. His judgments are in all the earth. And you see that, right? You see the Lord's judgment, his ways, all throughout the earth. And that's why the scriptures say that a fool, right? The fool hath said in his heart, there is no God. He hath remembered his covenant forever, the word which he commanded to 1,000 generations. Which that 1,000 generations doesn't stop at 1,000, but it's just to emphasize eternal. Which covenant he made with Abraham and his oath unto Isaac, and confirmed the same unto Jacob for a law, and to Israel for an everlasting covenant, saying unto thee, I will give the land of Canaan, the lot, the lot of your inheritance, when they were but few, or but a few men in number, yea, very few, and strangers in it. Right, when you go into the time of Abraham, when the Lord first told him that, him and his household, compared to the inhabitants of Canaan, they were few. Same with Isaac and same with Jacob. But the Lord told us it would be our inheritance. When they went from one nation to another, from one kingdom to another people, and I'll read this in the NLT as well, but it's basically, going from one place to another, because remember, we were like pilgrims. They wandered from nation to nation, from one kingdom to another, eventually ending up in Egypt, right? He suffered no man to do them wrong, yea, he reproved kings for their sakes. And wherever we went, the Lord did that, right? He protected us to where nobody could harm us. In the time of Abraham, when he went to dwell in Egypt, what happened? When they took his wife, the Lord came and reproved, that king, for doing that, and protected and suffered no man to harm us, saying, touch not mine anointed and do my prophets no harm, which in applying to Israel, we are likened unto the Lord's anointed, right? And when the Lord says this, it's not like an adversary or an enemy comes, and then the Lord says, hey, don't touch my anointed and don't do them any harm. It's an action. And this is all throughout our generations. And an example is also with it said anointed here, right? And it called Jacob is chosen. When Laban was pursuing after Jacob, the Lord came to him in a dream and told him, you better not. He said, you better not speak to him good or evil. Let him be. And so the Lord is going to protect us, right? It says, don't do my prophets any harm, and we are likened unto the Lord's anointed, so we're going to be protected. Moreover, he called for a famine upon the land. He brake the whole staff of bread. That was, what led to us going into Egypt, right? The story of in Genesis. It says he sent a man before them, even Joseph, who was sold for a servant. So at this time, remember, when you go back to the story, Joseph was sold into Egypt by his brethren. And then shortly, sometime after that, when the Lord established Joseph in Egypt in a position of authority, he brought a famine in the land, which affected everybody, especially in the land of Canaan, including Joseph's relatives. And they had to come to Egypt to buy bread. So that's the famine spoken about in verse 16. But you notice how verse 17 is worded, right? He sent a man before them. If you're not spiritual, like Joseph was, and it even took him some time, but when you look at the events that Joseph went through for the first year, the first 2 years, the first 3 years, it did not seem like the Lord was sending Joseph like as a preparation to preserve his family. It just seemed like some misfortune had befallen him. His brothers were envious. They sold him. He was begging them not to. And now he's in a foreign land as somebody's servant, somebody's slave. And then he starts to do well over there. He misses his family. But what are you going to do, right? And then he's accused of adultery. He's accused of trying to take advantage of Potiphar's wife, even though that wasn't the case. And now he's thrown in prison for a couple of years. Imagine that whole time being in there, thinking about that, like, damn, how did I end up over here? Like, I'm in a foreign land. My family thinks I'm dead. My brothers probably think I'm already dead. So, it's not like this. You're waiting for somebody to come and find you and rescue you. And he's just there. And all he can trust in is the Lord. Nobody's going to think about that, at that moment because nobody knew the Lord was about to bring that famine. So no, they weren't thinking about it as, oh, the Lord is sending somebody. Like, this is his means of getting Joseph into Egypt to meet the right people at the right time, to put him in a certain position to do the right thing so he can be the man from within to help his family. Who would have thought about that? Who would have thought that? Nobody. So the lesson or the point that I'm making here is, just like it took years, and I mean years, before the reason behind the Lord's action was revealed and manifest, it really took most of his life before he was able to see why what befell him as a child was necessary. So sometimes you may go through things, or the Lord may do certain things, and you're not looking at the bigger picture because you don't even have the remaining pieces of the puzzle. So you're just in it and you don't see why. But sometimes it's not because the Lord is just trying to put a bad situation on you, like with Joseph. Who wouldn't think that after being sold by your own brothers? But it was necessary. It was a necessary evil, a bumpy road to get you to a peaceful destination. So keep that in mind when you go through certain hard things. And it seems almost unjustified, but there's a reason. Sometimes it's not all judgment. Sometimes some of it is, the Lord taking you somewhere or setting you up for something. So it says here, whose feet they hurt with fetters, which is like shackles. He was laid in iron. It's a way of saying that he was a slave. Until the time that his word came, the word of the Lord tried him. Right? So until the time, let's read this in the NLT, that he was to be raised up, right? Until the time came to fulfill his dreams, which, guess what? When you read in the book of Genesis, those dreams that Joseph had, that was actually the foreshadowing. Because the dreams about the sheaves they were gathering sheaves, and his sheaves stood upright, and his brothers bowed down and paid obeisance to his. And then he had a dream about the sun and the moon and the seven stars, being under him, or bowing to him. That signified him being raised up and his family coming and being, at his mercy, bowing to him. And it actually happened. See? And so it says, until the time came to fulfill his dreams, the Lord tested Joseph's character. That was all those years where it seemed like, damn, you just, you were in Potiphar's household. And then when it seemed like things were all right, you were accused and thrown in prison. And it's like, damn. But Joseph didn't sin, right? And all that. He stayed faithful and loyal to the Lord. So that was the Lord trying him. The king sent and loosed him, even the ruler of the people, and let him go free, because he interpreted the dream of the baker and the butler, which were both, they had angered the Pharaoh and were thrown in prison. And that's where they met Joseph, and he interpreted their dreams. And later on, Closer to the time when the Lord would bring the famine at some point, that's when the one that was released, told Pharaoh, because Pharaoh had a dream that he didn't understand. And then he told Pharaoh, hey, there's a man that I met. He's able to interpret dreams. And then boom, that's why. So when it says with the king, it's talking about Pharaoh. And he loosed Joseph, right? Even the ruler of the people let him go free. So the ruler, being Pharaoh, let Joseph go out of prison. He made him lord of his house and ruler of all his substance. This is recounting, all right, the journey of how we got into Egypt and the deliverances the Lord brought to us. Okay, so if you're not familiar with that story, I'm not gonna go down in details in memory lane, but I'll give you the gist of it, and you can go back and read it. But anyway, it says here, he made him lord of his house and ruler of all his substance. That was making Joseph governor over Egypt, to bind his princes at his pleasure, and teach his senators wisdom. Right, that was the authority Joseph had over those in Egypt, even in high positions. He could instruct the king's aides as he pleased, and teach the king's advisors. Israel also came into Egypt, and Jacob sojourned in the land of Ham. And he increased his people greatly and made them stronger than their enemies. Right, eventually, we had favor with that first Pharaoh, but the Israelites started to increase in population more and more and more. He turned their heart to hate his people. That is, when the new Pharaoh came up and said, hey, we got to deal wisely with these people, to deal subtly with his servants. So we got to enslave these Hebrews, and we got to cut down their population. That was the evil thought they had against us. He sent Moses his servant and Aaron, whom he had chosen. He shewed his signs among them and wonders in the land of Ham, which is talking about Egypt. And these signs were the plagues the Lord brought upon the Egyptians. He sent darkness and made it dark, and they rebelled not against his word. It says here, the Lord blanketed Egypt in darkness, for they had defied his commandments and let his people go. Let's read this in the NIV. He sent darkness and made the land dark, for had they not rebelled against his words? Wisdom of Solomon goes into that. All right, 16, 17, 18. Verse 9, he turned their waters into blood and slew their fish. Their land brought forth frogs in abundance in the chambers of their kings, because the frogs were going everywhere, into their pots, into their ovens, into everything, their beds. Can you imagine that? Disgusting. He spake, and there came diverse sorts of flies and lice in all their coasts. He gave them rain or hail for rain, and flaming fire in their land. Yeah, he was setting the land on fire. He had it raining down hail, destroying their animals, their servants, their crops. He smote their vines also and their fig trees, and brake the trees of their coasts. He spake, and the locusts came, and caterpillars, that without number, and you know what they came to do, and did eat up all the herbs of the land, and devoured the fruit of the ground. So they ate all the crops. He smote also the firstborn in their land, the chief of all their strength. And that was the final, part of the plague the Lord brought in Egypt, when he slew the firstborns of all the Egyptians. He brought them forth also with silver and gold, and there was not one feeble person among their tribes. This is dealing with Israel, when the Lord delivered us after bringing that last plague on Egypt, and we were allowed to leave. Egypt was glad when they departed, for the fear of them fell upon them. That's why I said in Exodus, we spoiled the Egyptians, because they lent us gold and silver and all of those things, which it is the spirit why they did that. Because when you go to the time of the Exodus, right, going into Leviticus, remember that a lot of the Lord said, hey, go and tell Israel, right, those that the Lord has moved their hearts to offer all these different materials, including gold and silver, for the building of the Lord's tabernacle. Where do you think they got all that gold and silver? They were slaves in Egypt. So where would they have gotten all that gold and silver? You see? And so now you see why the Lord had them borrow all those things from the Egyptians and spoil them. So we're not talking about like one or two golden earrings here and there. No. They took their fill. Verse 39, he spread a cloud for a covering, which is the chariot, right, in the wilderness that was leading them, and fire to give light in the night. The people asked, and he brought quails, and satisfied them with the bread of heaven. He opened the rock, and waters gushed out. This is when Moses commanded the rock, and brought forth water onto Israel to drink. They ran in the dry places like a river. Yeah, because that's why they were complaining for water, because there was no water around. It was like dry. But from the rock, the water came out like a river. For he remembered his holy promise and Abraham his servant. And he brought forth his people with joy, and his chosen with gladness, and gave them the lands of the heathen, which were the Canaanites, and those that were dwelling in the land of Canaan, and the surrounding regions, right? Og, the king of Og, right, and the territory of Heshbon. And I believe the other one was, let me see. Yeah, that's who it was. Let's look up this name again. Yeah, Sihon or Sihon. Oh, interesting. It says here. Let me see if they have another one on here. Chon with a long O. Hon. Sihon. Or Sihon. This with the stress on the first syllable. So Sihon is alright, or whoa, shit. I'm not doing all that. We're gonna call him Sihon. Sometimes we're gonna throw in there Sihon, but I think Sihon is Sihon. Yeah, it's okay. He's not that important. I guarantee you, he's not that important. So, it says here. So that's the heathen, right? That's the lands that we got, and they inherited the labor of the people, right? Because remember, the Lord said, "I'm bringing you into a land that you haven't labored for." Right, you're gonna be able to eat of the crops and you that you didn't labor for, but you're gonna benefit off of it. That they might observe his statutes and keep his laws. Praise ye the Lord Yahweh. And that brings us to the end of the book of Psalms, the 105th chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha Kodesh. And until next time, Shalom.